Hello, everybody. We have been in a collective trauma with COVID-19 for nearly a year now. And collective trauma is when there is a very long trauma that happens either in a country or globally. And of course, we are there. This is not the first collective trauma that our world has been through. This is the first pandemic that I've ever been through. And hopefully it's the last. But because there have been many collective traumas, there have been a lot of studies done on the pattern and the trajectory of what we go through as these traumas progress and how we can heal. There's a chart, you perhaps have seen it, about collective trauma. And we go through a stage, and the first stage, as you will recall, was shock. I remember a year ago when I realized we had an epidemic, and then they called it a pandemic. And I think a lot of us were in shock. And then we go into the next stage in this pattern and trajectory. And the next stage is the heroic stage, where we bond together, we lift one another up, we send virtual hugs on Zoom, and we clang the pots and pans as our frontline essential workers were coming home from work. And as you may have noticed, those days seem to have disappeared. We left that stage, and then we went into the disillusionment stage of collective trauma. The disillusionment stage was, and I think we're just leaving it, because even I myself have talked about the COVID fatigue and the fatigue of the fatigue. I think that this disillusionment stage was the period when we were just saying, wow, I just didn't even imagine that it was as bad as it is. This is really bad. And now we are entering the anniversary stage, which happens about 1 year into a traumatic event, a collective traumatic event. Maybe it happens in a personal traumatic event too, I'm not sure. But the anniversary stage is, we're faced with a new restlessness and heightened anxiety and fear. And you probably have noticed, I think I have, that's where we're at right now, with a lot of anxiety around the vaccine, and where is the vaccine, and where am I in the line, and how quickly can I get it, and will I even take it when it's my turn, and all that sort of stuff. A lot of extra restlessness and fear, even after all this time. The happy part is that we are really on our way to the final stage, which is the stage of reconciling. It's the stage where we will, as a whole around the world, begin healing our grief and coming together once again. So now we're in this anniversary stage, though, with this extra restlessness and fear, as I mentioned, but we don't have to wait. I mean, we're absolutely impacted by the collective energy around us, but we don't have to wait to begin to heal our own anxiety and restlessness and fear. There is a Zen practice that I have found really powerful, and I'm not an expert, of course, I'm learning it myself, but I have begun sharing it with caregivers who I care for and support in their journey, and I think they found it helpful too. And I'd like to share it with you now. In 1994, there was a Zen peace master, Roshi Bernie Glassman. And Roshi Glassman developed 3 tenets for living, or 3 principles for maintaining ease in our lives. And of course, there was no pandemic then, so it didn't have anything to do with that. These 3 tenets are described as, the first one is living or being in a place of not knowing. And this sounds overwhelming, so bear with me, because as human beings, of course, We hate not knowing. We are hardwired to want to know what's next, to control a situation, to put a timeline on it, to put a story to it, and just grip and control. We don't like to be in a place of unknowing or uncertainty. So if we can take a particular situation that's painful, whether it's something that's in our own hearts or an external experience or someone that we're caring for, if there's a pain and difficulty going on, we can take that deep breath and try to come into a place of not knowing. Not knowing, it just is. And if we can do that, even for a moment, it will then take us to the second tenet or principle, which is bearing witness. A lot of people get confused about bearing witness. Bearing witness is just simply that, just simply being present to what is and observing without trying to change anything. And it doesn't mean that we become a bystander. We are fully engaged, but we are there. And if we can develop the grace of those two first tenets, the living in the unknowing and the bearing witness, it will take us to the third tenet, which is a place of compassionate action. The word compassionate being the key here, not just action, but action with compassion. And that almost always starts right here. You'll feel your heart expand a little bit and a sense of ease as you're able to enter this state of grace, understanding that you have entered a present moment of not having to change anything. And sometimes that might mean doing nothing. Sometimes taking action or taking compassionate action is not taking any action. So there we are. And I know this sounds like a tall order, but if we can take this in the tiniest chunks. As I said a moment ago, I help caregivers and care partners with this concept quite a lot when there's an issue that comes up for them. That population is faced with so much confusion and so much uncertainty that life can be absolutely overwhelming. The normal that they once knew has completely flown the coop. It's just not there anymore. So, but the resistance that comes up around wanting to know is where the pain arises. And this is true for all of us, not just care partners. Needing to know keeps us in a trapped state of high stress, a constant state of fear and suffering in our bodies and in our minds. So, caregiver or not, we all have plenty of reasons to practice this right now, and we don't have to wait for the collective stage to begin. I urge you to just dip your toe into this practice. And to begin, when something painful is coming up, we begin always with a deep grounding breath. And ask yourself, can I just surrender for a moment and drop my story, drop the control around this? Is it okay to just have it be without me for a moment? And then go into the bearing witness, being present to the unknown, just watching it for what it is. And after that, feel yourself in that state of grace. Feel your heart open with tenderness and just allow it for a moment. It'll come up over and over, but we keep trying. Thank you.